get that far north. We're picking this up in Daf Chof Omid Beis. And Daf Chof Omid Beis, and we started this last week, and there's some unfinished business. But in particular, I want to pick up this Baal Hamor, Rab Zerachia Halevi, died in 1186, because very much based on his words that hopefully we'll look at, we've got the date line. And the question is, of course, we know the international date line, but in Halacha, where is the date line? And the answer to that question, very much based on the words of Rab Zerachia Halevi. Okay. Right. There are three statements in Daf Chof Omid Beis, and I think that attachment was sent round to people today. Daf Chof Omid Beis, good. Thumbs up from people. And if you remember, we're picking this up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down. Good to see you, Benji, with a few extras there. Wonderful. Away from our cousins. Good stuff. 7 lines down in Chof Omid Beis. If you remember, actually 8. No, 7 down. Not 7 up, 7 down. Ki solik Rab Zera. When Rab Zera went up, do you remember he went up? He was a bit of a traveler. When he went up to Eretz Yisrael, Sholach Lahu, he sent messages. And there's the following messages. Tzorech she'ei lailo v'yom min hachodosh. Sounds like you need to have a laila and yom from the new moon. Yes, v'zu she'omar that we learned the week before that in the name of Abba Avua Derab Simloi Machashvin es Toldosai. You calculate when. Good, we got Sami with us. We Machashvin es Toldosai means when the new moon. When is the moilad? Remember, the moilad is the moment that the moon moves in the plane of the sun and the earth. It's moving around just at that point. That's called the moilad. What you've got to have according to this, says the Gemara. Remember the beginning of the line here is noilad. Noilad kodem chatzos. If the moilad is before chatzos, b'yodua shenire somach lishkias hachama, it will certainly be visible near to shkias hachama. What does that mean? We'll see in a minute. Lo noilad kodem chatzos. If the moilad does not happen before chatzos, which is midday, and we said, why do you need to know all this? And the next line tells us, if witnesses say they saw the moon, we can say it can't be, but we haven't explained anything yet, don't worry. If people can go on mute, yeah. Omer Rab Zera, Omer Rab Nachman. A couple of other statements. Don't worry about understanding this in a minute. We'll pick this all up. And this is the statement Rab Zera of Nachman. Chof Dalad Shor Mechse Sihara. 24 hours. The moon is invisible. Lididon for us. Shis Meatika. 6 of the old moon. For Samna Sore Mechadator. 18 of the new moon. Yeah. And us, of course, this is written in Bovel. That's us in Bovel. And Bovel was east of Eretz Yisrael. Lidi too, for those people over there, them in Eretz Yisrael. 6 mechadato, betamne sore meatika. And 18 of the old. Don't worry about understanding this for the moment. And again, the Gemara says, why do you need to know this? To lakhushe sada. You need to know this information because then the Bezdin can deny and say, not deny, they can when Adim come along saying they saw the moon before these times, it will be impossible. I'm giving you 3 important rules which will help you understand how the movement of the moon and how long it takes. Right. Now, at this point, gentlemen, and Simon's going to send the link once again as a chat. Now, I'm saying goodbye to faces until we finish this. Hopefully everybody can now. I think you can still talk.
Can everybody find chat? Can everybody find chat? Should be the bottom bar.
Is everybody all right? Charles, you okay with chat? Good. Now, at this point, we wave for the moment, well, for half an hour or so.
I'm sending a link. I've just sent a link on chat.
Now, if you press that link, it will come up exactly at the right place we need. Thank you, Simon.
You're welcome.
People can come off and on mute. Hopefully. Does somebody want to try talking to me?
Yeah, I'm here. I can see it. The link works perfectly.
Perfect. And you can come
almost
off and on.
As good as Peter Robin, as if he were here.
As if Peter was here.
Unfortunately, everybody, we can't share the screen because none of us are hosting it this week. It's being hosted by the Shiur and we haven't got a representative, so we can't share screens.
So we will, sadly, we will not see each other's faces for 3/4 of an hour. If we can manage that, then we can continue the share. If people feel they can't.
That way.
I know it's not easy. But, okay, everybody back to mute, please. Now, we will go through this as much as we can in the time permit. So we are where it says ayin base. That means it's Chov Omid base. And Rabbeinu, we're talking here, this is the Hamor, he's called Hamor HaKoton because he's called Rab Zerachia. Zerachia means bright, light. So therefore his Pirush is called Hamor, and it depends which Masechta he's writing on. Actually, whether he calls it Hamor HaGodel or Hamor HaKoton, which is wonderful. And the Reb Zerachia Halevi died in 1186. And I'll say there are various Masechtas that he wrote on. Reb Zerachia Halevi, he's called the Mo'or HaKoton, in case you're interested, on anything in Moed, and on Brochus and Chulin, and the Mo'or HaGodel, I suppose the big, heavier Masechtas, anything in Noshim and Ezekiel. Okay? Right, so here we are, we called Morakot, and it says on top 5a, that's only 5a of the page, but it's referring to where it says next to the number 4, we've got Shom Omid base, and here we have it. Let's see how we do.
Can I just ask about the name Zerachia? It means to shine, is that right? Is that to do with why he chose Mo'or as his...
Absolutely right, absolutely. Spot on, that's why he calls it Hamor.
And you told us about him just a week or two ago, to do with the Hanukkah lights, and
yeah.
So he's taken up with light.
Oh, very much, yes. Well, I mean, yeah, he's got some wonderful, very early. I mean, he died in 1186. Now, 1186. So that's 300 years before Columbus. Yeah, approx. Bear that in mind, and this is very interesting what he's going to say here. He's got a different shot than we saw last week about the 24 hours. Well, what we really want to see is how, so if you've got, I don't know if you can look at the Gemara as well, probably not anymore, can you? Can people see the Gemara? Well, I will tell you what the Gemara said, so don't worry. Okay, here we go. Ki solik rab zera. Omar tzorich she'laylo v'yom min achodosh, remember? Etc. Yesh bekan sholish shemuis amukos b'sodoseh. There are 3 statements here. very deep. Koshes bepirushon, difficult to understand. Veim stumois, hidden. Most of the chachomim don't really understand this at all. Ad shedonu, until they like judge really or consider lefi datum she'enu ka'alocha, that it really is not relevant. V'zeh dovo shel tema. What is that? He said that's a surprising conclusion to come to. Eich yi kol hadvarim amurim b'Talmud. How could things be said in the Talmud? B'soit ha'ibah, talking about some secrets about intercalation, shalok halacha, that they shouldn't be relevant to the actual halacha. He says, "Va'eich nismoch." We seem to rely, when we're talking about astronomy, ala kundrusin hamchuborim. There are various like kundrusin, various commentaries, or what can I say? Not quite books. Loads of writings, hamuchuborim, that have been written b'sodo iba, v'naniach haTalmud ha'oruch lefonenu. How can we look into other books on astronomy when we're disregarding what's written in the Gemara? And if the Gemara has written it, it's meant for people to understand. V'al kein ani omer ki kol hashemuos halolu. All these statements, ka'alocha hein amuris. Oh yes, there's halacha there. People can scroll down as I'm doing. Who can tell us this difficult pshat? Who can tell us what it means? For beginning of the line is me. Who can find us this great depths? I'm afraid I'm going to say, Kivar onoichi meish. I am a boor, B-O-O-R, from humanity. V'lo binas odomli. I've got no real understanding. V'lo lomadti chochma. I can't really say I'm a whiz in chochma. V'das kedoshim eda. Maybe das. I think it goes on the below. All those things, I don't know anything he's saying. And almost they push me aside, the chachomim of Sfarad. I am very much, I say, at their ankles almost for those wise people. Nevertheless, Nuso'ani libi, my heart has lifted me up. Lichtov dati, I'm going to tell you what I think is pshat. Bepirush shmuas halolu.
Do you know one thing? Kuntras is the same lashon as kuntras, isn't it? And Rashi,
yeah, it is. Absolutely.
And Rashi is sometimes referred to as kuntras,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
Yeah, so and how would you translate that?
Well, we say kuntrasum, don't we say when we're referring to Rashi sometimes?
Yes, we do. What's the best English word for that? Sorry, bless you.
Bless you, that wasn't me.
Kuntras is what? What should we say? I'm trying to think of the right
annotation.
English.
Annotation.
Yeah, a bit more than that. It's like a small booklet on. Yeah, a kuntras is a booklet.
Yeah. Okay, we'll think of it. Okay. Right.
Something like that. Okay, very good. Keep going. Where are we up to here? Oh yes, beginning of the line is halolu, not hanerus halolu. You can make the screen larger if you like, if it's too small or whatever. Okay, are you okay? I'm going to give you some introductions. They are like base. They are pillars on which to lean on. In these statements. Now, again, I keep stressing this is what, 1,000 years ago? Not quite, but close to 1,000 years ago. He died 1186, so this is written before that. So we are talking about 1,000 years ago. Da ein hayom v'halayla shovim bizmanon ka'achas b'chol makomis. Now this may have come as a surprise to some people. hopefully not to us. In other words, have you got it? Beginning of line, L'cha? Day and night is not the same everywhere on the world. Okay? 1186 dying, don't forget. In B'chol Makom Es HaYishuv, V'lo B'chol Ha'oretz Kula. Ki kol esrim va'abor shos, 24 hours, min hayoim, umin halayla, kol sho'o mehen, every hour, he erev b'mokom echot, ubokem b'mokom acher. It can be day here, night there, and vice versa. Al panei, beginning of the line, panei, got it? Orech ha'oretz, across the length, the breadth of the earth, kula. V'hi kahakofas hagalgul oleha hamakif mimizrach lamarov. Here we talk about the orb, yeah, the earth turning, makif circling from east to west. Wow, very interesting. Beginning of line is lamarov. V'zehu hapirish vayi erev vayi boker. Ha'oma be very gracious. Not the way we normally translate, so we say it was evening, it was morning. No. Vayhi erev, vayhi boker. It can be night and day at the same time, depends where you are on the world, on the earth. And that's what's written by erev, vayhi boker. Fascinating pshat. By erev, it was evening and boker, a complete revolution, yeah. So in other words, happening at the same time, be made voracious. Now, then he goes on to a bit. I'll have to be selective here to a certain extent. I'm dropping down, otherwise we will get stuck. Right, go to the line that says, Dalad Ravoe Hayoim. The line is Dalad. Dalad Ravoe Hayoim. Got that word Dalad? I've dropped down a few lines. The Mezeg, he's talking there about the weather. Lach and Yovish, Kovachim, hot, cold. Keneged Dalad to Kufas Hashona. There are 4 seasons of the year. Bless you. But Abanu Kudos. Now, this is the point. Have you got the word to Kufos? Hopefully. Third word in, but Abba Nukudos, there are 4 places, a Nukuda, a spot. Asher Bekav Hasoivev. This is the line, like a plumb line, not quite, but a line, Hasoivev es Oirech Ha'oretz, which goes round the length, and this time I'm talking about breadth of the earth. There are 4 places that I'm going to talk about, equidistant, and we're talking here about longitudes, yeah? In other words, if you split the earth, longitudes, that means going from north to south, there are 4 places I want to talk about, says the Baal Zerachia, the Balamor. Got it? Horishoina, beginning of the line. Ketsei HaMizrach, the extreme east, v'yoshveha, and the people living there. Heim hashoichnim al spasiam ukionis. There at the huge, there is referring to the Pacific, B'mizrach, on the east. That is the first point. And they're going to be equidistant. In other words, what you'd say, they're 90 degrees from each other. Okay? That point is the first point I want to talk about. And that point, we'll see where it's 90 degrees from. Have you got it? Beginning of line is B'mizrach. B'hanukuda hashenis, the second point, 90 degrees from it, he shekenegda, v'hu, actually, it's the second, the way he's going to define this in a minute. Hold on, no, I'll take that back. The 2 points he's going to first define are 180 degrees from each other. The first one is on the extreme east. The second one is on Katsei Hamar, extreme west. Don't forget, based on Eretz Yisrael. Gam heim shoichnim al sfas yom ekionis. They are the other extreme. So the back, you'll see as we'll explain this. In between, you've got the Pacific, B'marav on the west. V'hanukuda hashlishis, he, beginning of line is he. The third dot, spot, got it? When it says he, emtsois, it's a midpoint, bein shtei hanukudos horishonos, before those first 2 points, between those 2 points. Hope I'm not confusing everybody here. He is focused in Eretz Yisrael. You'll see in a minute. Keep going. Al Pnei Horetz. The he, beginning line is he. Nikres Tabu Horetz. That's the central point, the stomach, the navel of the world. V'yoshveha v'heim yoshvei Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is the center of the world. V'chol Eretz Yisrael, all Eretz Yisrael as well. That will be the place which is midpoint between the extreme east and the extreme west. V'hanukuda horavias, the fourth point, 180 degrees from Yerushalayim, shekenegdo, mitachas lo. He said, when he says underneath, he means to the other side of the world. V'gam hi entois, that's also midpoint. Bein shtei hanukudos horishonis, between those first 2 points I've described. Vehi nikras tabo hayom, that's in the depths of the sea, mid-Pacific, not quite mid, but in the, yes. Olev hayom, onukudas tahaim, or the depths. Veyesh bein kol nukuda ma'aba nukudas elu. There are between each one of these points, 4 points, ad hanukuda shekenegda, until you get to the point next to it, merchok mahalach yud beis shores ba'orech ha'oretz. So he started off with 2 points 180 degrees from each other. Those are the 2 points he started with, extreme east and extreme west, 12-hour gap between them. Kafia kofas hagalgul, with the turning, the spinning of the earth, the galgul, the round orb. Aleim. Umikol nukuda asmuchala. And from those 2 points I started off describing, which are 180 degrees from each other, there are 2 more points equidistant from those extreme east and west. Mahalach vov shois, next line, ba'orech ha'oretz, 6 hours. Mahakofas hagalgul aleim, from the spinning, turning globe. Very interesting. So what is he saying here? He's saying we have an extreme east and extreme west. Midpoint is Yerushalayim. Now we can work backwards. If the midpoint between them is Yerushalayim, it means that 90 degrees away from Yerushalayim will be the extreme east, and 90 degrees from Yerushalayim in the other direction will be the western point, and a further 90 degrees west, which is 180 degrees from Yerushalayim, is the extreme point between east and west on the other side of the globe. Okay? Beginning of line ba'orech.
Norman, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think everybody's got a different beginning of the line.
Oh no.
And that
have you not got a line which begins ba'orech?
No.
No,
and I know where you
lines
are.
Different, yeah.
It's all different. It depends on the screens they've got.
Woo.
Let me just I'm just
have
wondering.
You got the word for hamoshel al zeh?
Has everybody got the place? Can anybody indicate if they haven't got the place? Okay, so we're all right. The beginning of the line is different though for everybody.
What? Just I'm interested. What is the beginning of your line?
So
First word of the line in Safaria.
Sorry,
It's not. Mine says Ba'orech. I mean, I've got
Good,
the same as you, Norman.
Yeah, mine
What would
says
be-
Be'orech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine says Ba'orech.
Okay, then mine doesn't. That's all right.
That's very interesting.
Mine says Ha'oretz on that line. I've got different lines here.
Mine says Haaretz as well.
It's not interesting, but you have got as you move along
I
that line.
think
You've got
actually what it is, Norman. Whenever you say the first word in the line, in mine it's always the last of the previous line. So
Oh, isn't that interesting?
yeah.
Okay. Right. So now, Vahamoshel al Zeh. This is fascinating because what is telling us here really with this, look at this example. Hamoshel al Zeh, I'll give you a moshel, an example. Ki k'sheyiyeh boiker, when it will be first thing in the morning. And let's talk about an equinox to keep things simple. 6 in the morning. 6 in the evening is sunset. 6 in the morning is sunrise. And then you've got midday halfway through. When it will be morning to those people in the east. Lo yihye boiker l'shoichne Yerushalayim ad vov shois la'achamikan. They'll have to wait another 6 hours to get to sunrise. And with this calculation, from these 4 places, in other words, there's always a 6-hour gap between those 2 points, which are next to each other, 90 degrees, 6 hours, 90 degrees. V'zeu mahalech hachamo b'hakofas hagalgol b'chof daled choice. As the spinning earth, or obviously it looks like the sun's moving because it's the earth spinning, al daled nukudas elu. Wow. Keep going.
Norman, quick question.
Yes.
This was 400 years before Galileo, right?
Yes.
Is our understanding that they knew the Earth was round?
Yes, it is. It's mentioned in the Gemara. Absolutely. It's mentioned actually. There are even pasukim about that. It's enough. But this is absolutely clear here from the Alamor. More than that, he's telling us where the beginning of the day is.
Yes. Yeah. It's God.
This is fascinating and crucial, and of course, very important with halacha, because he's telling me that the day begins 6 hours before Yerushalayim. In other words, you look at the map, the world map, if you like. You draw the world map out. Of course, it's on, as we know, it's on the globe. But if you put it out on a sheet, you'd have Yerushalayim at the central point. And then you'd have moving along, you'd have 90 degrees later. That would be the first, that is where the day begins. Look at, you could carry on, I'll give you a further example. I've got Mekomos HaYishuv, or your one word before this. Scroll down, begin, I don't know if you can find this. Have you got the word V'yom? What did we say before, Simon? You were one word behind.
When you give the beginning of the line,
yes.
I have, some others may have the end of the line. So you've got to give, if you can give the first 2 words of the line, then
right. Okay. V'yom min hachodosh.
Yeah,
so you may have the word min hachodosh. Quite a long way down.
It's quite a way down, is it?
Keep scrolling. V'yom min. Got it?
No,
so Mervyn, you should have v'yom.
Yes, I've got it. Min hachodosh. Yeah, min hachodosh.
And you should have min hachodosh. Perfect. So you've either got v'yom, which I've got, Mervyn's got, others have. Other people have min hachodosh. Right, now look at this. I'm going to explain this to you. Now, let's stop for a second. His point different to the way we were learned last week, is when the actual Gemara says 24 hours the moon is hidden, it means the moon is actually not visible for the first 24 hours after the Moiled, or it's not sufficiently visible. Bear that in mind, and let's see how this works out. Now I'm moving along that line. I'm going to explain the subject here. I'm going to give an example. One of the days, let's say we're fixing Rosh Hashanah. Now, bear in mind, this is not dependent on visibility. He will say that later. This is when they were fixing the calendar. This Gemara is very much around the rules you'd have to employ when you're setting a calendar. Look at this. Imagine one of the days, have you got Hayomim She'onu? You may have She'onu. Other people have Hayomim. When we're fixing Rosh Hashanah, Shiur Rosh Chodesh Tishri, She'onu Kovim Oiso B'Yom Shabbos. You may have the word Shabbos or the word B'Yom. Imagine Rosh Chodesh Tishri, we're saying here, we're fixing it for Shabbos. Ein onu kovim. So what a fascinating pshat here. You cannot make Rosh Chodesh, you cannot make Rosh Chodesh ad shehei hamoiled b'Yerushalayim Yom Shabbos kodem chatzos. If the moiled, the same rule that we had before, the moiled must be actually before midday of Shabbos. Imagine you want to make Rosh Hashanah, the first of Tishri, on a Shabbos. The moiled must have happened before midday for you to do that. And that's exactly what we employ today. Why is that? Continue. V'oisa shor shehi hamoiled hu biksei hamizrach. So, and then he says again, imagine this is happening just before midday of Shabbos. What is the time now? If you move 90 degrees to the extreme point of the beginning of the day. What do I mean by that? Move to the east. Keep reading. He biksei hamizrach. That will be techilas leilei Shabbos. What does that mean? Biksei hamizrach. What time is it? This is fascinating. If it's just again, this is now midday of Shabbos. So if you move along, Biksei HaMizrach, right? That's the place where the day begins. If you just move beyond that, you will be night time, correct? 6 hours further east makes it from midday nighttime, which means is Techilas Leilei Shabbos. As it's the point which begins, and just any further from there is back. You've gone back a day. You are now the beginning of a Friday night. You're not the beginning of Shabbos. You with me? When it's midday in Yerushalayim, what time is it? 90 degrees further east, and just beyond that. He's saying that will be Techilas, the beginning of night, and the night will be Friday night. Why? Ki shoichne Eretz Yisrael, the people in Eretz Yisrael makdimin b'seder minyan hashavua v'sho'oseyen. They come there earlier, livnei shoichnei, the extreme edge of those people, just pushing out beyond that point, 90 degrees away. They are 18 hours behind us. You with me? 90 degrees from Yerushalayim, you were either 6 hours ahead of Yerushalayim, which means nightfall, just going into Sunday. And if you just move slightly beyond that, you are now night or sunset of Friday night, because that's the point where the day begins. You with me? And you are therefore 18 hours behind Eretz Yisrael. Or we can leave that for a second. Is everybody lost? I hope not.
Well, that's the concept of a dateline, presumably.
Sorry?
It jumps back a day. So
yes,
it's
that's
a dateline.
Exactly right. That's the point, that it jumps back today, because that is the dateline. The dateline is 90 degrees from Yerushalayim, moving east. Therefore, if it's midday in Yerushalayim, at that point of the dateline, it moves from being sunset of Shabbos to sunset of Friday. With me?
Yeah, I understand the calculation, but I'm just wondering, didn't we say previously, a couple of years ago, that the dateline is the furthest east where there's community? It's not.
No.
It's not just on the.
That's a
recall. It depends where the furthest.
No,
eastern,
what he's saying. Very good point. What
east of
he
Jerusalem,
has not
where
mentioned.
Community was a Yishuv.
He said here very clearly there's Yishuv there, but you're right, it's getting very close. Actually, we need to get a map out. We're getting very close, like saying, where are we 90 degrees? Anybody got a map? If we're 90 degrees, we are out, we're getting to the end of China, aren't we? And Japan will be the other side of this. With me? What the Balamor said, he's made it very clear. It's a straight 90 degrees based on, that's where, if you like, inhabitants, there could be more people further away from there. Of course you are, you've got Japan, but the bulk of the land finishes 90 degrees beyond Yerushalayim. And therefore, says the...
So the community where there's a Yishuv is not a defining factor then?
No, not according to the Balamon, no.
Or is it?
It may be a large number of inhabitants there, but that's not crucial according to the Balamor. What is crucial is 90 degrees. It's true. Once you've hit that point, that will be the point, the changeover point. Now, so therefore what he's saying is this. If Shabbos, therefore, the Moiled falls on this Shabbos before midday, when you go just beyond the dateline, they can have a full Shabbos after the Moiled, can't they? If the Moiled is on Friday midday in Yerushalayim, at the dateline and just beyond, they will have a full, because it's only sunset there, it's sunset going into Shabbos. With me? Therefore, what he's saying, the Balamor is saying, that's why you have to have the Moiled before midday. Why before midday? Because if it's going to be after midday, there will be nowhere in the world where they will have a full day after the Moiled. A full day. And when I say a full day, I mean a full 24-hour period, beginning with sunset of Shabbos after the Moiled. You with me? Very interesting. Hope people have understood that. If the Moiled is after midday on Shabbos, you cannot make Shabbos Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh. Why not? You've got to have a full 24 hours beginning with sunset somewhere in the world, which is going to be that whole day, 24 hours beginning with sunset after the Moiled. And therefore the Moiled must, for that day to be Rosh Chodesh, the Moiled must be prior to midday. Because if the Moiled's after midday, there will be nowhere on the globe that will have a full 24 hours of that day. In our example, it was Shabbos, which would have happened after the Moiled. Is that clear? Because the dateline is 90 degrees 6 hours later than Yerushalayim. Therefore, if the Moiled's prior to midday, then there will be somewhere in the globe, on the globe, somewhere which is further at the points of the dateline, which would, so we're moving further later in Shabbos, and then you switch back and get into Friday. At that point, you've got to sunset on Friday, and you'll have, therefore, the whole of Shabbos in this example being after the Moiled. That's the crucial point. And that's why you need to have a Moiled happening prior to midday. Otherwise, it's called a Moiled Zokin, and that was the statement we had in the Gemara before. Noiled Koidem Chatzois, then Biyodua Shenire Somach Lishkias Achama, we're somewhere in the world, and we'll have a whole day of that. With me? Lo Noiled Koidem Chatzois, if the Moiled doesn't happen before midday, but only after midday, there will not be anywhere on the globe that will have the whole day post the Moiled. Very interesting. But what you can see from here is this 90-degree crucial point, which is the dateline according to the halacha, according to the Balamah. Okay, a few minutes left. Let's see if we can scroll down further. There was another statement. Let's see if we can work this out. A lot of scrolling going on. Woo, a long way down. It's Israel. Pas Mara b'mishkia sachama. Go where it said Nispare lecho mima shepirashnu. Have you got that? Anybody shout out? Mima shepirashnu. You, Mervyn, on others who've got the same layout as I have.
This one starts Shepirashnu now.
Oh, good, excellent. So you got Shepirashnu, I've got Mima. So some people have Mima.
I think we've switched sides now.
Oh, have you? Okay. I've got starting Mima, and you've got, that's your last line, last word of the line, and you've got Shepirashnu.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Mima Shepirashnu Cholamalo. Now, we're trying to understand the following statement, see if we can do this in the remaining time. There was a further statement which says, in the 24-hour period, we said, Lidi Don, for us, 6 of the old and 18 of the new, us in Bovel, and for those people in Eretz Israel, 6 of the new and 18 of the old. What is this all about? Now, before we start looking at this, Mima Shepirashnu, Worth remembering that, of course, the new moon is always seen close to sunset. The old moon is seen close to sunrise. With me? If it's any later than sunrise, of course, the sun will, I'll say, the light of the sun, the glow of the sun will mean that it would be impossible to see such a small moon. It's got to be very close to sunrise, the old moon, and very close to sunset, the new moon, the real new moon, as close as you can to the Moilad.
Can you explain that game? You know, because if they got this diagram in the art scrolls, which says, like you said, the rising old moon is on the west and the setting old moon.
We're sticking with the Balamor.
See.
What have you got, an art scroll in front of you?
Yeah, but it's got a diagram. It's got that diagram.
Now, 1 minute. It's very nicely. Have a look. There's an appendix at the back. Please turn to your appendix at the back.
My appendix was removed years ago.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear it.
At the back of Rosh Hashanah.
I think there's an appendix there.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just saying I didn't.
No.
There's an appendix. I think at the beginning of forward. I can't.
No, it's appendix 2. It's appendix 2.
I'm saying a second statement. Yes, I'm coming there.
Appendix 2.
Bal Hamor's interpretation. That's right. Of 20.
Right. So you're right. Before we get that, it's true. Well, I don't know why I've thrown you. It's worth having a look at that anyway, because that's going to be a wonderful chazor of this. Yeah. But before, you're right. Then turn back to your earlier. I haven't got pictures in front of me, which you had before. The new moon, obviously, when I say obviously, as it's going round, orbiting, the new moon.
I just got cut out. I got cut out, Norman. For you saying
again. No, the new moon. Of course, it's invisible. You cannot see because the sun it's in the same plane. As it moves away from the being the sun behind it, if you like, you start seeing a very small crescent moon.
Yeah.
A very small crescent moon will only be visible just at sunset. Yeah. After sunset, in fact, the moon would have set as well, very soon afterwards. You with me or not? Yeah.
I just don't understand what's the difference between the rising
and it's in reverse. If you've got the old moon, the moon before Rosh Chodesh, it's on the other side, if you like, looking at the sun. You have to see that moon just before sunrise, the crescent moon on the other side. The visible side where us facing it will be on the left. That will be just prior to sunrise. You'd see that small crescent moon. Okay. Then with the sun rising, of course, the glow of the sun will mean that the moon will become invisible again. Yeah. So the old moon is only seen at sunrise. The new moon is seen at sunset. Of course, as you go further and further into the month, the moon moving around means it's seen further higher in the sky and for a longer period of the evening. Yeah, that's what happens. So what he's saying here, Mimashe pirashnu l'chol amalo, have you got it? When the moon is seen at the beginning, the earliest part of its like small crescent moon, imagine that it would be seen at that date line, right? Besoif, and imagine this example, it's seen at the date line, Besoif Yom HaShabbos. Okay, the end of Shabbos. Bifas Marov, so that's the end of Shabbos. Again, Shiur Chidusha l'shoichnei ketzei hamizrach, Besoif Yom HaShabbos, the end of Shabbos, Bifas Marov im shkias hachama, he omedes ba'oisoi shor birakia, al Roshei Sheichne Eretz Yisrael, v'hu lohem chatzos yom rishon. What does that mean? This is the point, remember, the point of the date line. What time is it in Eretz Yisrael, just beyond the date line? Imagine it's seen with sunset at the end of Shabbos. What time will it now be in Yerushalayim? Just beyond the date line. Okay, just beyond the date line, at the point where the day changes. So that's still the last part of the day, if you like, and it will be the new part. But it's just at that point where it changes. If it's sunset of Motzei Shabbos, it will already be midday on Sunday in Yerushalayim. Lefi shein makdimin shmoina esrei shois. They are 18 hours ahead of that point of the date line, and just beyond, going slightly further east, because that's the date line, Eretz Yisrael will be 18 hours ahead. When will people in Eretz Yisrael see that new moon? In 6 hours' time. From that midday, when it started being visible to those people in the east, it will now be Sunday night, the night going into Monday. Okay, you can't possibly see it for those hours, he explains, because the sun is too bright. Because I don't want to, as we're getting late here, now drop down to where it says Biktsei HaMizrach. Have you got the word HaMizrach at the beginning of the line? I've got Biktsei in mine. You should have HaMizrach in other people's. Have you got the word HaMizrach?
It's got Biktsei HaMizrach. It seems to jump around, this thing.
Oh, you've got Biktsei. Fine. Biktsei HaMizrach is great. Keep going to the end of the line. V'im higia halvona hayeshona, if the old moon, letachlis hadakus, the smallest point where it's visible, l'shoichnei k'tzei HaMizrach, Shachris, again, we said, remember, that's only going to be visible first thing in the morning. If it's visible first thing in the morning on Shabbos, what does that mean? The old moon, when was it last seen in Yerushalayim? If the old moon is seen, the smallest old moon, if you like, the smallest size of that crescent was seen. And he says here, first thing in the morning, because the old moon is always first thing in the morning, and the smallest point, the smallest time, I say the sliver of the crescent was first thing in the morning in the east, 90 degrees from Yerushalayim. When was the last time they saw that old moon? Says Rashi, Shachris Yom Shabbos, Bifas Mizrach im Hanetzach Hamo, V'hi Omedes, again, the Tachna Sheikh Nitzei HaMizrach, that's right, Bifas Mizrach im Hanetzach Hamo, V'hi Omedes Bosa Shor Keneged Nukudo Revi'is Shutabo, Osa Shor Hi L'Shoich Eretz Yisrael, Chatzois Leil Yom Rishon, Lefi Shei Magdim Yudche Shois, V'hem Lo Ro Halvona Me'achoirei Shachris. Have you got it? They only saw it Me'achoirei Shachris Yom Shabbos. They last saw that old moon Mipnei Orachamo 18 hours earlier. Kol Yom HaShabbos V'nei Esther. The Motzei Shabbos is getting too complicated. If you have to be sure to get a. Okay, let me explain what he's saying here. The new and the old. We can go back if you like. Let's turn this off and go back to our Zoom. I hope that was, now let me just explain this last part. I've got it in front of me. What we want to explain is this last piece of Gemara. And it goes like this. Let me just explain the piece I want here. If the new moon is seen to those people in the east, when will the new moon be seen? If it's seen first by them, when will it then be seen by people in Eretz Yisrael? 6 hours later, because it's only midday. Correct? That's what the Gemara meant when it said, Lidit hu, the new moon, shis mechadata. In other words, the last piece of Gemara is focusing on when was the new and the old moon last seen. And we're focusing at that point of the date line. So if at the date line and just beyond, which is the beginning and the end, if you like, of the days, imagine it's just beyond that date line, you see the new moon, right? The first visibility of that new moon is seen by them. They get the first glimpse. When will that new moon be seen in Yerushalayim? 6 hours later, because it's only midday. If it's possible to see the new moon at the date line, you'll have to wait another 6 hours for people in Yerushalayim to see that. That's what it means, Liditu Shis. What about the other way around? If the new moon is seen first by people in Yerushalayim, when would you see it? It would be at sunset. When would the people at the date line see the new moon? 18 hours later. You with me? No. It goes both ways. Let's go with the new moon. If you're in Yerushalayim and the first people to see the new moon are those people at the date line, when will the people in Yerushalayim see the new moon? 6 hours later, because it's only midday. With me? If, however, the first people to take a glimpse of the new moon are in Yerushalayim, they're the first people to have seen it in the world. When will the people at the date line see the new moon? 18 hours later, because they're midnight. They'll have to wait, and it's only visible at at sunset. That's how you've got the Gemara, which says here, it's 18 for us in Bovel. If those people in Yerushalayim see the new moon, then we'll have to wait 18 hours to see it. If, however, we see the new moon, they'll have to wait 6 hours to see the new moon. What about the other way around? If the people in, let's just think this through, is people at the date line are the last people to see the old moon, they're at the date line, right? When was the last time people in Yerushalayim saw the new moon? 18 hours earlier. When do you see the old moon? You see the old moon first thing in the morning. First thing, and that's it. If they get the last glimpse of the old moon, that means it's first thing in the morning, let's say 6 o'clock in the morning. What time is it in Yerushalayim? It's midnight in Yerushalayim. But by the time it gets to sunrise, it's too late. If the last people to see the old moon were at the date line, then the people in Yerushalayim would have had the last glimpse that they would have got 18 hours earlier.
Yeah.
And that was the last they saw of that old moon. That's why the Gemara says 18 hours. That way, the old one, lididhu tamne sore me'atika. What about the other way around? If people in Yerushalayim see the old moon, they see the last glimpse of the old moon, that means it was sunrise. When would the people at the extreme east, at the dateline, last seen that old moon? 6 hours earlier at sunrise. Once it got later than that, they can't see the moon because the last visibility of the moon was in Yerushalayim. With me? And it's so small, that size, they can't see that when you go further east. Why? Because the glare of the sun means it's going to be impossible to see the moon. You with me?
Except the Gemara is talking about Bovel. It's not talking about the dateline. It's Bovel is only 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours earlier.
You're absolutely right. But the Gemara's writing this, he picks that up as well, the Balamar, and says the reference here is to the extreme east, although you're quite right, Lididon, we represent people east of Yerushalayim, and right at the extreme, Bovel, it's true, is there, extends right across up to that furthest east point. Once you go beyond that, of course, you're into the Pacific, although there's still people living there. You've got Japan, etc., until you come right round again. Good point, and that's what the reference is here in the Gemara. Whatever you see from this Gemara, and I say if you get a chance, have a look at the article, very nicely explained there in that appendix 2, I think. We're going through that. But the point you'd see very clearly from the Balamor and the Chazon Ish, when this came up, this actually was a very practical halacha that came up during the Second World War. If you remember all those people escaping across Europe, they got to Shanghai. Many of them.
It was the Mir Yeshiva, wasn't it? It was the Mir Yeshiva.
Absolutely, the Mir Yeshiva there. They got to Shanghai, they got beyond Kobe in Japan. And if you look at this, it's fascinating. They've got a nice diagram there. You can work it out yourself. 90 degrees from Yerushalayim is just China. Actually, back to Mervin's point, once you've got that point, which is 90 degrees, and that's interesting because, of course, it goes through Australia, you cannot tell me, that's another interesting point, once you've got land, which is still part of, you're not going to say, just across the road, for me it's Shabbos and for you it's not Shabbos. You can't change, you can't have a date line in the middle of dry land. That's another point, okay? So you've got your 90 degrees, then whatever that is, you extend it to the end of the land mass, and that will be the date line. So which means the whole of Australia will be this side. If you go to New Zealand, according to the Balamar, New Zealand will be the end of the day. Australia will be right at the beginning of the day. You with me? But what it also means is this, that Japan, therefore, will be the other side of the date line. And that was the crucial point. Not everybody agrees with the Balamor. And the question is, what is the halacha? When they arrived there, of course, they had Yom Kippur coming. They've got Shabbos. When is Shabbos? When is Yom Kippur? And the conclusion of the Chazon Ish at that time is, yes, we rely on this. Forget about international dateline, because as we know, the international dateline is beyond Japan. It's much further out into the Pacific. And the reason for that is, obviously, you don't want to split China and Japan and have them different days. Same with New Zealand and Australia. And according to some people, yes, it's not just 90 degrees, it's a bit further than 90 degrees. But according to this Balamon, I say the Chazon Ish Paskin like this and that, had to get a message across, because no no texts and no emails. Had to get a message across this telegram that got across to them when they should, how should they paskin, and they paskin according to the Chazon Ish that in fact yes, the dateline is in between China and Japan, and therefore depends which way you were. If you were in Japan, of course, you were therefore at the end of the day. If you're in China, you're at the beginning of the day because the dateline, as I say, will be 90 degrees. And it's based on this Gemara here and this Baal Hamor in explaining this, I say, tricky piece of Gemara. With that, gentlemen, well over time. Fascinating. Hope we had any other people joining us, and we got Michael. And hopefully everybody's all right. So with that, gentlemen, we will close this interesting piece. I say worth having a quick bit of chazara on that. If you get a chance, have a look. The article there. There's a few interesting pieces there as well. But Appendix 2 will go into that in, I won't say more detail, but at least you'll have that explained as I say a reference. Yes, we said just to conclude, we wish Charles a huge mazel tov, and as we said, we're looking forward next week. If that's all right with you, Charles, you're happy with that? And any wave from Charles? A wave from Charles means we will start in Mitzvah Hashem next week with your Siyum together with Sammy.